Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Word Today with a live discussion. We're very happy to be with you. Tonight we have three or four topics that we want to talk about that kind of made the news this week. And we will start by something that is very important and also very personal to some of us and our work field. Um, and it's the homelessness management in the US. So basically, we are seeing, oh no, sorry, the homelessness management in California, precisely, and all of the US. So we are seeing an increasing of the um, pressure on like homelessness management, I would say, in California towards something that looks like getting homeless people out of the city, especially in San Diego, um, where there is like 3,000 people that are concerned with that law at this time. And so we just wanted to like compare the management of, San Diego with cities like Denver and cities like Portland to kind of see what is the solution here and how can we actually manage this thing effectively. And so I would love to have the input of Isaiah and Sage on this topic to kind of inform us on what's going on in here.
Hi. Yes. Um, well, so basically, as you were saying, Yuri, like Isaiah, he used to work in a place that gave services to homeless individuals.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and but what this is about, what this story was about is that in San Diego, California, in Southern California, they have there's this law that was fairly recently passed that basically allowed them to disperse homeless encampments basically at will. So like they didn't necessarily need to like establish some sort of clear public safety or health reason for it. They don't have to um, give there used to be, I think, like a time limit. Like you couldn't continually ask people to move their encampments. It had to be like a certain amount at a time. They had to be able to stay in place for a certain amount of time, just out of like, I guess humanity, really, honestly. But they passed a law because probably the dynamics in the city are kind of to the point where people are like getting sick of seeing homeless encampments like in downtown areas, right? And so the city's leadership probably felt uncomfortable with that, and they want to try to appeal to people's desire for not not seeing that, basically. And so um, they've been just kind of dispersing homeless encampments and moving people just kind of to the outskirts of the downtown area, so like just outside of it in San Diego. And it's kind of like difficult because a lot of the times in these cities, the services for homeless people like are in the downtown area. At least that's definitely the case for Denver. It was definitely the case for Phoenix too, although in Phoenix they had this giant services center that was in this massive empty dirt lot. So it was so isolated from downtown that
It was its own, like,
it
tent city,
it was its
honestly.
own tent city. Yeah, and I think it was like deliberately designed that way.
Yeah.
So all the homelessness would be concentrated there and out of the downtown area in Phoenix. So they had, I guess, the ability to do that there, but probably not in San Diego and definitely not in Denver, where we are now, you know.
Well,
So
they're trying to do that more now in Denver. Like there's been more of like what we're seeing in San Diego that it's like they're trying that's happening more here too, but like I feel like the main issue is just resources, you know? It's resources, and I feel like the the solution for this is obviously, more affordable housing. But I've like in my time working, at the shelter that I was at, I also saw that transitional housing is a big help, but there's just not enough of places like that. And what transitional housing is um, it's a place where um, some places like you can even have your own apartment, or it's like communal living where you would get your own room, and then there's shared living spaces like bathroom, kitchen, laundry, things like that. Um, but you barely have to pay anything to be there, but you have the community there while you're at this transitional housing to help you get a job, help you get on your feet, whatever you need to get income and get that stability so that you can then transition to permanent housing. But you won't fall on your face then when you get the housing,
Mhm.
because um, you've had the support to get income, and you've had the support to um, kind of get your feet under you. And for me, I was working with family, so it was like you had even childcare. You can get the support of having childcare so that moms can go to work, and kids can be in daycare or school. So it's all of these factors that provide that support and stability for families and individuals to be able to sustain that permanent housing. But it has to be affordable, of course, for people, and it has to be like those supports need to be in place too.
So from what you're saying, and thank you for providing that, it seems like you're thinking that the way to go in Denver seems to be more loving, appropriate, effective at what we're seeing in San Diego.
I would say because of the resources and the population, like there's less homelessness here than there is in California. But
Mhm.
like if Denver had the population and the I mean, Denver's pretty expensive too, but it's not as expensive as like San Diego. We might be seeing the same issues. But I do think there's like, I don't know, there's it does feel more loving, I guess.
Mm.
yeah, I mean, because also the thing about California is that California has the highest. This is very surprising because in American politics, people talk about California as though it's like this Soviet socialist republic that just doles out aid to people constantly, right?
Yeah.
It's actually not so completely like that. Although I don't know what the Soviet Union did with homelessness, but it's just a funny thing to say. But California has the highest percent of homeless people who have no shelter, who just live outside. So people who don't have a permanent place of residence, um, like 68% of homeless people in California basically just sleep outside, and the rest might like stay with someone temporarily or something, or be in shelters or stuff like that. I think Colorado's is like 30 to 40% of the homeless people in Colorado just have to be outside and don't really have any form of shelter. So it's like a little better in Colorado, and I don't really know why that would be, but
Well, I feel like
yeah,
it's partly because the climate, because it's you can't leave people outside in the cold.
yeah, that's
But in
true.
California, it doesn't get cold, so it's like,
Yeah, not as
you know,
Not as much.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
Maybe
weird.
they
I don't know. Sorry, so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, I was
No, you're fine.
estimating they didn't prioritize it in California because they're
yeah,
like, it never gets that bad here,
Yeah.
you know?
yeah. That's why
Yeah.
I asked for like a little bit of a report on numbers because it seemed like the media that you provided was saying that 3,000 people would be affected by the new law that would like make make them get out of camps more like frequently. And I don't know, I feel like obvious people, it seems to be a little bit unclear because it's like obviously it seems like it's not the whole population, the whole like population of homeless people in the city, because that would feel a little bit weird because Denver then has had to deal with like 9,000 people
Mhm.
that lives
Yeah.
outside frequently. So yeah, I don't know.
Um, what was it? Yeah, like in San Diego specifically, they were saying there are 6,500 um individuals without housing in San Diego right now, and about 3,300 of those don't have any temporary shelter at all and are just
Mhm.
out on the
Okay.
street, which means, oh, what is that? It's like kind of similar to the overall proportion in California. Um, that it might even be better, like in San Diego, a higher rate of the unhoused population has some temporary shelter than in California as a whole. So, but I guess it's become like a problem enough where the city is like, it sounds like what they're trying to do is they're trying to like not allow homeless encampments to stay in the same place for too long, so that like the impact of it would be like lessened. But what it resulted in was like, based on some interviews with people, like some homeless people in the city, they were being asked to move like frequently, like every day or multiple times a week, to move their encampments. And um, it sounds like they're kind of like undecided what to do, versus like in Denver, there was pretty much one big plan. Like they designated a few spots in the city to be like, these are designated camping spots where you can be. And then they just kind of told everyone to move altogether, more or less. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it sounded better. Whereas in San Diego, it sounds like the situation is more, they're just like, I'm not sure what to do, but we don't want you to stay in the same place too long unless it's kind of out of sight of downtown. And so it's kind of, I don't know. It seems like they don't really feel like they know what to do yet. And they're just kind of being like, oh my God, the public's angry. Like, let's do something, that kind of vibe. So,
Yeah, that
you know,
makes sense. Yeah.
So you're just on the number in California. In that article, it said it's 180,000 people.
Wow. So yes, the all of California and San
Yeah.
Diego,
And then
San Diego had
it's like 6,000.
6,500.
Yeah,
Yeah,
6,000.
6,500
Yeah.
homeless people total, but only 3,300 of those are literally out on the street
Yeah.
all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
San Diego is a little bit smaller than the other cities, so in proportion that would make sense as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm just like, we're just wondering, like, obviously, like, we're discussing this because it is important. We don't necessarily have the solution, but it seems like other cities, like especially Portland, was saying that having housing and support for them was somehow more cost effective than trying to move them altogether. And even if Portland has less homeless people, it still has like a certain percentage of like homelessness and has had to deal with that problem. And also many major problems about like addiction, like credit, losing homes, etc. So I don't know. I would say maybe probably Sage is right. Like San Diego doesn't exactly know what to do yet. California in general. I mean, like 100,000 people, it can feel like a burden. It can feel like kind of heavy to have to manage all of these people. But yeah, seems like we need like more like concrete solutions, like something that feels a little bit more clear and precise. And also like, I know like they're not doing this just to be like, we don't care about you, so just out of sight. But it can pass as something that is not completely loving if you haven't tried to find like long-term solutions for all of these people in your city. So yeah, that would be kind of like, it feels like kind of what our discussion is coming towards, but I'm curious to know like how do you guys feel about the rest?
Yeah, it seems like Portland has done a good decrease in homelessness with the transition housing that Isaiah was talking about. It allowed people to have a little cushion area while transitioning into building their life in a new perspective. And from my experience of working with homelessness, it's actually not surprising that California would have so much because people travel to California to be able to stay on the beaches and take care of themselves in those times where they're not allowing themselves to find housing and they're going through struggles. So, from the numbers that I've looked at in Delaware in homelessness, a lot of even Delawareans moved to California when they knew that that was like a homelessness haven for them because they were at the beach. And here in Delaware, you don't really see a lot of homelessness as much as New York because there's like wood and forest. So a lot of people find encampment within the forests, and we don't see them outside as much. With what we surveyed in Delaware of the homelessness, the core wounds that they have addressed was unworthiness when it comes to homelessness. I feel that that's like a strong point that our unionist perspective can bring into because once you have that transition home, it feels like someone is taking care of you, someone is looking at you. So you're able to feel that worthiness too, and you can build from that. And yeah, a lot of the solutions I found in Portland and in Delaware was transition homes, was finding that worthiness and that care from those who were taking care of homelessness to treat them with respect and worthiness. Because that was like a reoccurring theme of like a core block to home was that I'm unworthy of.
So you guys have all mentioned this transition home process, but what is it about California that's necessarily attracting that kind of behavior? Is it a better climate? Like I'm trying to understand what would be the attraction to move into California where the numbers are growing and some of the other areas that you've mentioned, the numbers are shrinking. So what is the actual attraction here? Because there's a pull. There's definitely a pull. I mean, the homeless would be probably affected in very similar ways in very many areas, given the cost of housing, the cost of living, all of those kind of things. But there seems to be a pull factor towards California that's not necessarily prevalent in other places.
Yeah, what I know is the beaches and the weather. That's as far as I know for the attraction to California.
Yeah, definitely climate plays a big factor. I think also though because it's liberal. Because like for example, um a lot of people that have experienced homelessness, this is just from my experience. I've seen people like from the South, they would come to Denver because they weren't receiving any help. There's just no resources because people um, in red states are less willing to help. But in places like Denver and California, there's a lot more resources. People are just more willing to help, and
Yeah.
than you know,
That's how
than
it's going to
other
go.
places. You know.
Yeah, but it's not as much as people say though. So a lot of the times in the media in the U.S., at least in some parts of it, they say, "Oh my God, California is like a homelessness destination." Like it's not so much when they survey people, only 10% of homeless people in California came from other states. So
Yeah.
90% are Californians, which is that hard to believe? Not at all, because why? California is a state of intense economic pressure. It's the most expensive state to live in, other than like parts of Alaska and then Hawaii, which are like way remote. So it's like no surprise. And the same in Denver, the the report on homelessness. Yeah, it said like 90, above 90%, the same amount were from Colorado, and then the rest were from out of state, like Isaiah was saying.
Yeah,
Like,
there's I've seen that there's like you're saying, like there's this idea, people have this idea of like, oh, if I go to Denver or California,
I'm,
I'm gonna be okay.
yeah,
And there's definitely more help. I will definitely say that, but
yeah,
it doesn't, oh, it a lot of times it doesn't work out that way. Like there might not be that resource or that they were thinking of.
hmm
You know, it's like it depends on when you come, and like you also have to make your own way by like seeing like when you get here, like what's available to you, like what jobs are here, you know, like what's the
yeah,
housing like.
yeah,
So you do have to, yeah, I think it's that kind of idealization, I guess. Like people think that you're
Yeah.
it's like gonna be, and sometimes it is better a lot of the time, but sometimes you come here and um it's it's not available, you know,
Yeah.
because
which
all the
obviously,
shelters are full, and
yeah.
or yeah,
I would agree. Like, if I were in my feelings about this, or if I was like deciding where to live based on, or like manage my homelessness based on an idea and a feeling, like Texas is equivalent in terms of like beaches that they can, but like nobody is going to go to Texas, you know? Like they're never going to, we're going to say, oh my gosh, people are going to shoot me, like, you know, things like that. So there's definitely that idea. Um, there's also definitely the economic pressure of California that makes it so that 40% of Californians are also homeless. There is also this real deal about seeking um professional freedom or like professional gain, especially in the market of the entertainment, by going in California with almost no money and being in a very difficult situation, sometimes close to homelessness, sometimes homeless for a little while. It's not long-term homelessness like a lot of people that were already homeless, but that's something that is also there. And so if California is attracting, I won't say it's not brain gain, but it's like people gain, you know. The people gain of California in general makes it so that the proportion of homeless people is also going to be higher. So there is definitely like I think that would explain why there's such an attraction to California. I think there is an attraction in general, and it's pushed by the idea that it is a liberal state, even though it's like a little bit liberal, but liberal is not people are so like liberal is not socialist. Like a lot of liberal people in the United States are considered more right wing that people that are left wing or center in Europe. So it's not socialism. So it's definitely not the idea that people have about what it is actually to have a very, very, very developed social system. It does have a social system and liberties, and I think there are many, many things that are great, but it's not like it's not I think I guess socialism doesn't equal freedom or ease of life, you know. Oh, I don't know if that
So,
makes
so
sense.
partly what you guys are sharing, it feels a bit like there's an element of assuming that your source is outside of yourself. And so being a little bit out of touch with reality as well, because it's all perfect to chase a dream. And your dream is important, but there's also a balancing act with the life that you're living or the life that you're expecting yourself to live in having realized or starting to chase that dream. So there's definitely an element of looking at the source as being outside of yourself, but also an element of ungroundedness. So people are not necessarily looking at what's right in front of them in their reality and making newer, healthier choices that are more appropriate to their highest good.
Yeah, it definitely, well, yeah, that's definitely the case with why people experience homelessness. I mean, a lot of it too is that it's either relationship issues. So, like, a relationship falls apart and you're not able to economically support yourself and your children. And maybe it's a domestic violence situation, like that was seen a lot in the experience of Isaiah, right?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
and then I guess substance abuse and mental health issues. So I guess people just having like trauma, unresolved trauma, emotional issues, they cope with it maybe with drugs or alcohol, they something like that, or are attracting abusive partners and their relationships are falling apart, and then
Yeah.
that's like most of the homelessness. Most of it is that it's not people who deliberately kind of seek that out. Like they're like, I'm just gonna be homeless and I'm gonna have the government take care of me. That's a huge um line in like that circles around in the US, and it's like
Really?
I feel like that's very rare. Now people might have that, they might have these patterns that cause them to become homeless, and then they end up being like, well, you know, I'm not gonna like get out of this for whatever reason, but it's not, it doesn't seem common that people are deliberately seeking out this lifestyle. Do you know what I mean?
I'm
Like
surprised that people would think that
yeah,
a lot of people would deliberately um seek out this thing because it's really
yeah,
hard to be homeless, first of all. And I would say even on top of like for relationship problems that you've had and the patterns that you've had, being homeless is like you feel desperate enough in that situation that you're not always able to think with a clear head what is the best situation for you. But it's like I wouldn't say that it's out of desperation, not out of trying to feel comforted that you would choose to be homeless, I would say.
hmm, yeah. Did
Yeah,
you find that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up because a large number of youth homelessness is due to relationships. It's due to like um trans children that aren't able to stay at home and feel welcome because of the identity that they choose. And yeah, it's really hard to transition into who you are as well as feeling safe at home. Um, And I wanted to bring up this matter of resources. I know for New York, there is thousands of empty apartments that landlords don't choose to renovate or, fix up for rent control or rent stability because they lose more money having to fix it all up and rent it out than just letting it sit. So we have homelessness in so many different streets. And if there was more of an organization and a purposeful movement towards understanding the homeless and moving that, like creating that movement so that homeless have a place to go to, that would be so much more beneficial of resources than paying the police to have them go night shift and to scatter them around and stuff like that. So when we, understand the core of homelessness, we can move towards the best solution for it, the most compassionate solution.
Yeah. I think even on top of that, it would require people choosing to move as one, which is like difficult enough in our society, and which like in our community we are learning to do, still learning to do, even though we're very keen on having a system that is unified. So that would require really like people saying, hey, let's move as one so we can have more gain, less loss. We can turn around, we can help you renovate your apartment if you cannot rent it, and have it serve for someone who has need for it, things like that. So yeah, I would say there are plenty of things that would be resolved with just like having a unified front and handling of problems. So yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up because it's the behavior of the caregiver and the receiver. If they feel a trust and a oneness, then you can be able to move them out of homelessness. But a lot of people are very distrustful of anyone trying to help them because of their past traumas, that they rather stay homeless and figure out which place they're going to live in every night than allow anyone to help them.
Yeah.
So it's
That would
the
be true.
level of trying to actually let go of being controlled or a high level of distrust in, well, technically oneself and the system kind of thing. So you're not trusting the help that's being provided, but there's also not necessarily a trust in the administration to say we have a potential solution, because think about what you create when you say an administration that manages homelessness. You're creating jobs for a bunch of people, from plumbers, construction people, social workers, probably lower level financial people to manage accounts and things like that. But you're also creating housing for people. You could potentially create some level of education so that as you employ them into those smaller roles, that you teach them how to manage money and all sorts of other things. So there's a big ecosystem that can be developed if people actually work together. But again, the core of it is that there needs to be trust. But there also needs to be a desire not to give your power away, because a lot of it stems from the choice. You've chosen certain karmic lessons, and so the choice is to learn your karmic lessons as quickly as you can while not remaining in the upset. And it feels like there's a lot of remaining in the upset and not moving past it, not moving through that darkness to the next level of lesson that's probably not the same lesson, but kind of an extension to give you new skills.
Yes, you're right. There's only so much one can give and help in resources, but the other parts have to come from within as well. And I feel a good incentive for those who are able to give is to see the cost benefits when homelessness is eradicated. Um, Particularly in my experience, I did research through a hospital, and they realized that they were able to save so much money if they helped with the homelessness in transition homes, because every night we would have multiple homeless people come because of, getting hurt after being drunk or intoxicated or overdosed. And these are bills that the hospitals have to take care of. These are people that a hospital has to take care of. So the repercussions of homelessness is a lot more of a cost burden than actually taking care of a transition and an actual true financial literacy course, one that truly teaches someone how to manage and how to build one's self-worth, and we don't even get taught this in school. So imagine how hard it could be for someone who doesn't trust the system and cannot leave that upset.
Yeah, it's like that's a really good point that people our society doesn't, in the US at least, and probably other Western countries maybe, doesn't prioritize teaching people about this and about how to get yourself out of poverty. You don't learn about that at all. You learn about it outside. Maybe you learn about it from your parents or whoever, but school doesn't teach you that. It teaches you to know academics so that you can get into college and then get a job. But you could still do that, but still have trouble managing your money and your life. You're just like, I have a degree, but I struggle managing my money in my life. For example, I've been through that very much, or whatever it is. You don't want to go into what you studied or something like that. Or there's just so much. And then these other things come into play that you have to know in life. And I think our society is also learning in the Western society to be more compassionate and to be more to understand that we're all one and that we genuinely do benefit from helping other people. It's not just individualism or little nuclear family units that make a good society. It's also a sense of collective um, well-being, but not to the detriment of, like, so you don't want to make it so that, like, it's codependent and it's a drain on everyone and nobody can, like, you know uh rise up and improve their life dramatically because of that. But at the same time, you also don't want to be like every person for themselves, like, we don't care, you know we won't help you through your struggle, because that does affect everyone even if we don't know it. So
So
yeah.
there is a level of like school education reproduces the system and classes of life.
Mhm.
And I think even if like kind of like the government says like you expect your family, your nuclear family to provide enough support so you can actually know how to manage your finances better and manage your life and be prosperous and give back to your country in that way. I think there's also a level of like if everybody gets rich, like there won't be enough for anybody. But it's all about getting rich. I think it's about getting wealthy, and getting wealthy is not about the amount that you have in your bank account. It's more like the amount that you need to be comfortable and be out of poverty, which is different for everybody. And we teach even less about that, but like true wealth and prosperity is going to be so cost effective for our systems because we won't bleed into having to manage more of a homelessness or criminality everybody in their way will give back to society, which makes like more benefit than loss, society. And that's good. And I think we don't teach enough about that, just because like people don't necessarily believe that it's going to happen that way. It's kind of utopic, but like if you actually induce that foundation into everybody, it doesn't have to be utopia. Like you have a power to do that. So I think the powerlessness is due to a lot of people, rich or poor, believing in lack, actually, I would say. And
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. Carry on.
go ahead.
No. Eh?
No, go ahead.
So something else that's kind of stands out to me, and I'm not sure if you guys have ever experienced it personally yourselves, but when you actually feel like you're constantly in need, you're constantly in need. It just feels like life always provides you with an opportunity to be needy. And so this neediness that kind of surrounds the homelessness factor feels like that vibration is very much based on neediness. So there's always this perception of a lack of. And it's that relationship with lack that I feel might also be at the core. Because if we speak to a relationship, the minute you expect somebody else in a relationship to take care of you, you give them the power to not take care of you, which feeds need, which feeds a lack. And so you don't have a home. And so you need safety, you need security, you need food, you need shelter, you need. And it feels like it's this kind of perpetual cycle that kind of reinforces itself. And the minute you start to heal the feeling of needing, you actually feel satisfied or fuller. It's kind of like the difference between hungry and having eaten something and feeling satiated. Even if you're not full, you just feel satiated. So you feel like the hunger has been alleviated. And I feel like that's the core of the healing. It's this healing around lack and being in a perpetual state of hunger.
Yeah, there's a spectrum to that I see. There we have like an extreme spectrum where you have none of the basic survival necessities. And then we have a spectrum where you're able to afford a home, but through government assistance. And I get what you're saying is like when you feel that there is always a continuous need that is needed to be fulfilled from outside of you, it becomes almost like a powerlessness within yourself that you are unable to take care of yourself. So you are the person that will always need assistance from outside of you. So I can definitely understand where you're coming from. And that's where contrast comes from. Some homelessness populations have felt what it feels to have millions of dollars and then all of a sudden lose it. And they just want to go back to that and recognize that if they can just get just a little bit of support and help, they're more than willing to go that way. And then there are others who've experienced homelessness almost their entire life and would not know what to do with the money that they're given, whether it's from outside or whether it came from within. So, yeah, it's really looking at individuals' unique circumstances and going from there.
What if a system is like installing a relationship that goes both ways? I don't think that would be such a problem about neediness. Like, for example, Isaiah was saying how the housing also comes with childcare, so that the mother can go to work. I think there's also a level, and I think this is very, I don't know if it's like really visible in the US, but it's just very visible in France, where if you're out of work or out of a house, when you're provided with social aid, which like France is known for, you are expected to also provide proof that you are giving back to society in a way of like searching for a job, doing some sort of services and things like that. So if you have a relationship with the system, which again is based on trusting the system, I would feel like the relationship is also giving back. So you can feel a sense of need. You can, however, feel a sense of resentment, and I think a lot of people feel that, especially in France, towards having to prove that you're doing something during that time where you have nothing going on or you feel in need. So I think definitely I would say you guys are right about like neediness kind of being a form of that attachment that is very toxic for our society. And yeah, I think there's definitely a need to heal it for sure, because you're going to do all the things that you can in the world. Like if you're not choosing to be out of neediness, you may not have a situation that evolves or that is very supportive or long term. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
The way I see it is there's a large population of homelessness population that is mentally unstable. And Isaiah, back me up if that is correct for your experience as well. But yeah, so it really has to go down to stability, like mental health issues being stable and addressed first. I could give a home to anyone that's homeless, but if they're not even able to work or feed themselves because of their mental issues, that's one of the major reasons why they would go back on the street.
Yeah. And yeah, that's true. It's like you've got to have compassion, provide that level of like assistance, like helping people like get out of these really serious problems and stuff.
Mhm.
But
It's definitely trauma, and
yeah.
people have to choose to heal and address it within themselves.
Yeah. And I feel a lot of similarity between this topic and the topic of Armenia, really, and its relationship with Russia and also the West. I don't know if do you guys feel ready to transition to that and talk about that, or yeah,
Yeah, we can.
or does anyone have any other points or things they wanted to bring up about the homeless situation in the U.S.?
No, it feels like a very balancing act of finances too.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, what did you say? You're very what?
It feels like a very balancing act with finances as well for Armenia.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So yeah, like all of it sounds to me like there's almost an energy of dysfunction. So whether it's the mental instability or the dysfunctional association with needs and wants and all those other things, it feels like there's something amiss. So like when you say something's not quite firing on all cylinders, the situation feels like that. Feels like there's something almost kind of like you need to stoke the flames a little bit to get this thing firing again so we can see the fuller picture, because I'm not certain that we're quite seeing it. I know we touched on a lot of things, but it still feels like there's a little bit of a gap in the matrix here.
Not sure we're going to cover that gap tonight. Feels like there's also quite a bit of healing progression to do in all parts of the system in order to be able to have that, maybe a system that also provides mentally for people first before providing financially, so that people are enabled instead of needy. That would feel that way. But other than that, like, how do you feel about, I mean, like, I'm not seeing the parallel yet with Armenia, quite like you guys are seeing. But
Yeah.
do you mind explaining? Please?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically it's about a state of neediness, a state of
Neediness on Russia.
dependency.
Right? Yeah.
Armenia what Armenia is healing is a codependency with Russia. And the reason is Armenia has been, we know it was the part of the Russian Empire. Back in the day, it was part of the Soviet Union. And since the Soviet Union broke up, Russia has made a point of helping Armenia with their security. So giving them tons of weapons, literal Russian troops on the ground in Armenia, defending Armenia's borders. The FSB is like Russia's equivalent of the CIA. They have literal Russian FSB agents. Those are like the KGB, but just with a new name, rebranded, are in Armenia, helping them. And they even helped Armenia kind of de facto occupy a portion of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, the country just to the east, like a Turkic Muslim country, has had a long history of conflict with Armenia over land, right? And people are like, well, long ago my people lived here and now your people are here, and there's all of that issue. So Nagorno-Karabakh, a region in Azerbaijan, claimed by Azerbaijan, was then kind of claimed by Armenia, and they had people in Armenia settle there, and Russia was helping them kind of stay there and hold their positions until last fall. And Azerbaijan used like drones and more creative like means to like fight Armenia back. And even though Armenia was Russian supported, and then they kind of pushed all the Armenians out of Nagorno-Karabakh like all at once and had them go back. So it's just this big messy conflict, and that Russia's been helping because they want to have leverage over Armenia. And that's what happens, like when you're dependent on someone
Who's evil?
who's choosing evil, like the Russian government, they're gonna try to use you for their ends. And that's exactly what Russia's doing with Armenia and a lot of the other post-Soviet states. They're saying, hey, can you import more stuff from Western countries that are sanctioning us, and then can you export the goods to us? So it's just their way of getting around Western sanctions.
Just want to
So
strip in.
that's how I see it.
Just want to
Yeah.
strip in by saying that they were helped by Russia and yet they lost. For those who aren't familiar with the situation, like it's a big region, like an actual big region, as big as like an Eastern Europe country, that was occupied by Armenian historically. Azerbaijan is all around that region, so it's kind of an enclave inside of Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan has been claiming that part of the country for decades, and due to like kind of an error in military management and in ports, and with Azerbaijan being like very tight strategically last fall, Armenia officially lost this country, like the little military group lost this country to Azerbaijan, and then tried to reclaim it, but it's literally done in terms of like the law since 2024. And yeah, what's the other side of the story? It seems like Armenia is trying to get closer to Europe in the same while all of this is happening. So what's going on there as well?
So just at a very high level, they're trying to establish more closer ties with Europe. Not necessarily the European Union, because they're part of a Eurasian Economic Union that Russia's part of. They're part of some treaty organization that Russia's part of. They are basically helping Russia bypass Western sanctions through the import and re-export kind of process. So what they're trying to do is almost establish stronger ties of diplomacy with Europe, but remain within Russia's orbit and over time withdraw from Russia's orbit. Obviously, that can't really happen with all of these strong military ties, the FSB protecting their borders, the Russian military training their soldiers, them using primarily Russian military equipment. So I mean, it's literally, Sage, it is exactly that. It's so strongly codependent that you could almost see them as the interwoven links of the same kind of blanket. Like it's literally a quilted blanket, and the extraction would mean to cut up the blanket because you can't actually extract the threads in any other way. So I feel like there's this desire for greater diplomatic and security relations with Europe, but all of that will mean that they have to let go of their Russian ties, which are very difficult to extricate themselves.
Yeah. It's like a relationship, toxic relationship. I don't think you can go out by trickling out. You have to be very firm and cut it all out all at once. It's
What is that, Nadia? Like execution style, cut off the head.
oh my God. Yeah. Cut them
Queen
out.
of Hearts. Off with his head. Off with his head.
Um, there is also this thing about, I feel that Armenians have not yet healed from the genocide, and all of this thing with Azerbaijan, I observed it in December, and it feels like they're kind of trying to do everything to protect themselves from the outside because we're so scared that a new genocide would happen, which I have compassion for, but it isn't helping them at all. Like, it's not going to go well. And I think we can agree with that. So, um, as hard as it is to see them lose on all sides right now, I think there is a level of that growing up that they have to do and strengthening up and just like suit up and just do what you need for your country. I love you guys' expressions. So funny.
I agree, and I feel like what keeps this situation is kind of in limbo, or it's kind of staying the same because they would have to heal that in themselves, like feel enough sense of internal safety to make this leap or this transition. And I feel like the idea is the US and the West wouldn't want to invest too much in Armenia or get too close because they're like, if your guys' systems are really corrupt and embedded with Russia, us assisting you would lead to us assisting Russia. So, you know what I mean? Like, for example, if they were like, we're going to be your new military supporters, or we're going to help you guys economically, well, then who's to say that the corrupt Armenian Russian networks wouldn't just take advantage of that, right? I feel like that's part of it. So it's in their own country. I think they would have to like root that out. And yeah, maybe like gradually, maybe even phase that out. I think it could be a more gradual thing, like, but I don't know. I don't know, but I agree, and I really appreciate that piece of compassion for the Armenian experience with genocide. And one of our roads, like one of our major roads, is called the Sardarapat Armenian Memorial Highway, and I noticed that every time I drive it, it's like I didn't know this, but I guess Armenian organizations are prominent in the U.S. and stuff like that. So there's a strong voice for that in the US, but it's like a weird relationship maybe with Russia, US, Armenia. So yeah. Anyway.
Strange. I'm not so. Then just my last point. I'm not so certain that this is one of those slow movements. This is kind of like a rip the band-aid and cauterize the wound kind of stuff. Especially especially if pro-Russian forces are so inculcated into Armenian structures.
Yeah.
Because, and quite simply, you cannot change a system when the foundation is shaky. You then have to remake the foundation.
I think it would
Yeah.
have been possible a few years ago, but with the craziness and escalation of Russia in international politics, I think it's no longer possible, but we never know. We never know. This might work. We cannot say, like, we don't predict the future. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to everybody that watched our discussion live or on YouTube. If you appreciated it, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this so we can do more of them. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.